Hello and welcome to another episode of Energy Express. I'm your host, Zach Harold. We're going to begin today with a little experiment. Emma Gardner is going to use dry ice to show us the different stages of matter.
Hello friends, my name is Emma Gardner and I'm the WVU Extension 4-H agent in Roane County. Today we are going to be talking about phases of matter. So there are three phases of matter. Solid, which means anything that holds its shape and that you can't pass through easily. Liquids, which will fill the container that they are stored in and can be passed through with your hand. And then gas, which will expand to fit any container. So these are our three phases of matter. So we are going to start today by doing a very simple experiment that you can do at home. All you need is a cube of ice and some kind of pan and a cooktop. All right, so I now have my cooktop, it's heating, I have my cube of ice, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it onto the cooktop and we're gonna see what happens. So you can already see that we have our solid ice melting. And you can see that there's water, which is the liquid version of ice, pooling around the ice cube. So this phase change is called melting. It's when a solid goes to a liquid. Now we have all liquid and you can see that there are some bubbles forming. So this is when a liquid goes to a gas, and this process is called boiling and evaporating. So there we have our three phases of matter going through their phase changes. We had our solid ice melt into liquid water, and then we have our liquid water evaporate into our water vapor or steam, and that is our gas. So those are our three phases of matter. There is another phase change that you don't often get to see, and we're going to be able to see that today. So if you guys are interested in doing this experiment at home, you're going to play with something called dry ice. So dry ice is the solid form of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a gas typically, and we find it when we breathe in oxygen through a process called respiration. We breathe out carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is usually a gas, but at temperatures as low as negative 109 degrees Fahrenheit, it solidifies into dry ice. So number one, it is negative 109 degrees Fahrenheit. You should never be touching it with your bare hands. You can use gloves to touch it, or you can use a tool such as tongs. So I'm going to be using tongs today. Second, if you are using dry ice, you need to make sure that you are in a well-ventilated area. And if you are carrying dry ice in a vehicle, you need to make sure you roll down the windows. So the big important things there are do not touch it with your bare hands and make sure you are in a ventilated space while using it. My preference is for you to use dry ice outside. So what we are going to do is we are going to see dry ice turn into a gas. So this is a process called sublimation. So I'm gonna use this cup here. I'm gonna pour a little bit of water in it, and we're gonna be able to really see this process. So it's happening right now, but you guys can't really see it. You might notice maybe wisps of the air, but this will make it a lot more obvious. So I'm gonna grab a couple of pieces. You can hear it whistling because it's so cold, and I'm just gonna drop it in here. You can already see it looks like it's boiling, but you can see the vapor pouring off of the table. So carbon dioxide and water vapor, for that matter, is heavier than our atmospheric air, so it sinks. So you can see it pouring off. And if you look at this, you can see that it's going from a solid to a gas, and it's bubbling up through it. So it also reminds me a little bit of a witch's cauldron. So all you need to do this is you need some water, and you need a little bit of dish soap, which hopefully I have enough. You need to mix it well. And I'm just making a bubble solution. What you'll do is you'll take a paper towel and you will fold it so that you can cut it into pretty narrow strips. So here I have my strip of paper, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dip it into my soapy solution that I just made. I'm gonna add a little bit more dry ice. Whoop. And I'm gonna pour a little bit of water over it so that it's really going good and we can really see it. There we go. And I'm gonna take my strip of paper towel, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rub it over the top. And you can see now we have our carbon dioxide and water vapor are filling up our bubble. And it's fun to see how big you can get your bubble before it pops. And you can do this a couple of times. So it's quite fun. Pop. So just to reiterate our phase changes. So if we have solids, liquids, and gases in a triangle here, you can see when the solid moves to the liquid, that is called melting. When a liquid moves to the solid, that is called freezing. Down here, with our liquid and our gas, when the liquid moves to the gas, that's called evaporation or evaporating. When the gas moves to the liquid, that is called condensation. And finally, we have our solid and our gas. So when the gas moves to a solid, that's our deposition or depositing. And when our solid moves to a gas, like with our dry ice, that is called sublimation or sublimating. Thank you so much for listening to me today talk about the phases of matter. If you try either of these experiments at home, please make sure that you have adult supervision. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the phases of matter, solids, liquids, and gases. Thank you.
Next up, we're heading to WVU's Jackson's Mill, where some of our 4-H'ers are going to demonstrate the greenhouse effect using plastic bottles and other household items.
We're at WVU Jackson's Mill, and today we're going to do an experiment about the greenhouse effect. I'm Lexi.
And I'm Ben.
And these are the supplies you'll need for this experiment.
You're gonna need 2 2-liter bottles, some water, 2 thermometers, a piece of paper, yeast, sugar, a spoon, and a 1/4 cup measuring cup. So to prepare your 2 bottles, you're gonna wanna take off any outside packaging it has and clean them out, rinse them out, and then fill them about 1/5 of the way up with water.
Then you're going to add your carbon source, which in this case is yeast. So you're also going to add sugar to feed the yeast, and while the yeast eats the sugar, it's going to generate CO2, which represents the CO2 and methane being released into the atmosphere.
And for this experiment, you're going to want to add about 2 spoonfuls of yeast to 1/4 cup of sugar, just to the yeast bottle.
We should use the funnel.
Yeah, I don't know.
Use a funnel, folks.
So we're going to use about 2 scoops to 1/4 cup sugar in this experiment. After you've added the carbon sources to your bottles, you're going to want to put the lids on both of them. You're going to want to loosely put the lid on the yeast bottle because this reaction adds a lot of pressure, which might cause the bottle to burst.
So once your bottles are covered, you're going to want to ideally put them out in the sun for about 1 to 2 hours. Since it's cold here and that'll kill the yeast, we have a heat lamp, and that will be our heat source for this.
Well, the two bottles are under their heat source. Do you think they're going to heat up equally or differently? How much of a difference do you predict if they're going to heat up differently?
Once your bottles have been under their heat source for 1 to 2 hours, bring them inside and measure the temperature. So, did your hypothesis come true? What difference do you observe between the control and experimental bottle?
Well, thanks for joining us here today. We hope you learned a lot about the greenhouse effect and had fun with this experiment.
Now we're going to switch from the sciences to the arts. Dylan Collins has taken us to WVU's Core Arboretum, where we're going to learn how to collect materials for plant prints in an environmentally friendly way. Then we're going to the College of Creative Arts to learn how to make the prints.
Hi, my name is Dylan Collins. I am Associate Professor and Sculpture Program Coordinator in the School of Art and Design at West Virginia University. We're here in this beautiful West Virginia University Arboretum. So this is basically a nature preserve that's adjacent right here to our campus here on Evansdale at WVU. So the great thing about the Arboretum is it's a place that nature is really preserved, and there's plants and trees and animals and things that you can see on a daily basis. So the activity we're going to do today is called plant printmaking. So the idea with this is that we will pick up some plants here in the Arboretum, some leaves and things that have fallen on the ground, and then we're going to use some watercolor to make impressions of the plants. Okay, so to start off this activity, we're going to kind of take a walk here around the Arboretum and gather a few things. The important thing when we gather materials is we want stuff that has already fallen on the ground. We're not going to pick anything off these beautiful trees or do anything to any plants that are existing, so we're going to do a bit of a scavenger hunt to gather some of these items, and then after we've taken a walk and we've gathered things, we'll go over to the Creative Arts Center and we'll get started on our printmaking activity. A couple things that think about as we're doing this scavenger hunt. So number one, I'm thinking about stuff that I find interesting. So these kind of leaves that I've gathered, I'm looking for things that are really neat shapes. So that's like one part of what I think is exciting about this. The other thing I'm getting really excited about is thinking about only finding things that have fallen naturally. So it's that idea of leaving no trace, not disturbing nature at all if possible. So I'm not picking things off trees, I'm not disturbing any of the foliage or things that naturally are here, I'm just taking things off the trail. So this is a good attitude to take as you gather things for this activity yourself. Okay, so now we are gonna look at all this amazing stuff that we got. We got some really nice things to work with here. So now we're gonna go over to the Creative Arts Center and get our watercolors with these leaves and things we've gathered, and we're gonna start our art activity. Okay, so we are here in the College of Creative Arts and the Canada Creative Arts Center. and we're in the Sculpture Wood Studio. So in sculpture, where I teach, we have wood and metal studios. This was a nice place, I thought, to do this. So now we're gonna get into our printmaking activity. So a couple things you're gonna need in order to do this activity. Of course, we have our plants, which we have gathered, things that we found on the ground. So we have plants. We also have some watercolor. So I just have a simple kind of watercolor set, and I have a brush. I have a cup of water for the watercolor, and I also have a plastic spoon. So you're not gonna drink out of the cup with the watercolor. You're not gonna use the spoon for anything else. This stuff is non-toxic, but should keep your art supplies away from your eating supplies. So now we're gonna kind of get into printmaking. So a couple things I would say about this. The easiest way I think that you could talk about a print is to actually think about your fingerprint. So all of you know that, say, if I get a little bit of watercolor right here and I press my finger into it, everybody is probably aware of how you could, say, make a print. And as you keep pressing, it's gonna get lighter and lighter. So we're gonna do something very similar with these plants. So a couple things I would say about this is that this is supposed to be fun and experimental, so there's not really a right or wrong in how you could approach this. So my advice is have fun. Ask for help from grown-ups as far as like keeping an area clean when you can make a little mess, and have a lot of fun with what you're gonna do here. Okay, so first I'm just gonna start and pick out a leaf that I like. So I'm gonna kind of examine this. This has different kinds of textures, just like your fingerprint and the texture on your finger. You're thinking too about like the qualities of the textures that you see on these plants and how that could leave an impression. So I really like the back of this leaf right here. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna just start and put a little bit of color here on the leaf. And I think I'm gonna hold it on my hand here just to kind of keep the leaf color only on the leaf itself and not on my paper here. And every leaf is going to be a little different when you do this. So once again, just the most important thing is to have fun and experiment and see how the impressions get taken off of these different plants. So I started with some red, and then I'm going to also mix in some orange here, because those are nice warm colors. And I've got this kind of saturated, meaning it's really covered with all of this watercolor. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the side that's wet and I'm gonna face it down. And if you don't have a plastic spoon, you could also just use your hand and kind of press down on it. But I'm gonna just use my plastic spoon here, and I'm gonna kind of push the leaf a little bit. And it's okay if you overlap the leaf and get on the paper a little bit. It's also okay if your fingers touch the paper. Okay, and now the big reveal. We're gonna just carefully peel this leaf off. Oh my gosh, look how pretty that is. So the really neat thing about it is I left an impression of the leaf, and you can see some of the watercolor is thicker. So you could smear that with your finger, you could let it dry, and it's gonna create different colors. I'm also gonna do another print of this leaf because there's still some watercolor on it. And this is gonna be a lot fainter, but still it's kind of pretty here. All right, so now we're gonna kind of test another one here. I just wanna see what different leaf impressions will look like with different colors, so different shapes of leaves. I do think that the back of this is awfully pretty with all these veins, so I'm gonna kind of keep playing with that, I think. the nice thing is you can really test it out pretty quickly by putting the watercolor on to see different colors and different textures and how they make impressions here. I'm gonna stick that down on the paper here, rub it with my spoon. Oh, that is really nice. So I think what I want to do for the next one is just to do an impression of the front of the leaf, because I haven't done that yet. I think that'd be kind of cool to give that a try as well. So I am gonna see how that works here. Okay, let's see how that happens here. And that's what I'm curious about, is since the front face of the leaf is a lot flatter, maybe this will give me a different kind of impression here. That's the fun thing about this kind of art, is it's kind of an experiment. And you get to play and have fun, and the outcome is going to be a surprise, which I think is a lot of fun. Okay, you're going to peel that off. Ooh, that's real nice. So the great thing about this is that you can use it from simple things that you would pick up out in nature. I think it's great to go get some exercise, go enjoy some fresh air, and see things that are in the natural world, like plants that are growing all around you. I think that's a lot of fun. And so that's part of the exercise, is the scavenger hunt part. And then the other part is the kind of art part. So thinking about how art and nature get connected in this activity with printmaking. Like I said, all of you are probably familiar with things like texture on your fingernail for making a print. And this is just another way to record some of those beautiful textures from nature using simple materials like watercolor and brushes and plants that you find on a walk. So I hope you have fun. Enjoy.
How does the moon cut its hair? Eclipse it.
Welcome back to our bonus activity. For this, we're going to try 3 more carbon producers. We're going to try bubbles in the form of the air that you breathe out, matches, and dry ice.
So for this, we're going to start out with the bubbles, and you're just going to acquire a long straw that you can fit down into the bottle and reach the water with, and then exhale into the bottle, creating a bunch of bubbles and CO2 in the bottle. And then cap it off so that all the CO2 stays trapped inside.
The next carbon source we're going to use is dry ice, which is solidified carbon at negative 109 degrees Fahrenheit. So you have to be very careful with it. We're just going to use a few small pieces. And as soon as you drop it in, it's going to start a reaction, and then you want to cap off the bottle. But again, not too tight, because a lot of pressure will form.
All right, and for the last one, you're going to do matches. And so you're going to strike a match, let it start burning a little bit so that there's a good bit of smoke coming off, and then drop it into the bottle so that the smoke is captured within. Then drop a few in there so that a good amount of smoke is accumulated within the bottle. And once all the smoke is in the bottle, cap it off, and then set it aside out in the sunlight and measure how it goes. That's all for this bonus experiment. I hope you enjoyed them as much as we did. Have a good day.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Energy Express. It's been so good spending time with you. We hope to see you here tomorrow.